He was barely alive when she found him. The sky had just begun to lighten with the colors of early spring, soft orange bleeding into gray. A cold breeze moved through the grass, quiet but sharp, and the only sounds were the distant calls of birds and the dry clicking of barbed wire. She saw him from a distance first, a shape too still to be an animal, too twisted to be sleeping. His arms were pulled back and strung between fence posts like some broken thing someone meant to forget. His feet were bare, his face crusted with blood. Buzzards were already gathering, silent watchers perched above as if waiting their turn. She didn't plan to stop. She never did. For years now, she had moved through this land without pausing for anything but water or warmth. But this time, something shifted in her chest. Not pity, not panic, just a sudden, sharp silence inside her that told her she needed to get off the horse. She dismounted slowly. Her bones were stiff from the cold, and her old bow creaked against her back. The boy didn't flinch when she approached. His eyes were barely open, and he didn't speak. But he was breathing. That much was clear. Shallow but steady. She pulled out a blade and began working at the wire. It cut into her hands, and his skin was already torn in places, deep welts crisscrossing his wrists and shoulders. Still, she worked fast, faster than she had in years. She wasn't sure what made her hurry. Maybe the birds, maybe the cold. Maybe the way his fingers twitched, like he was trying to hold on to something invisible. When the last piece of wire came free, he didn't fall. He just sagged like wet cloth, and she caught him before he hit the ground. His body was light, too light. She slung him over her shoulder and walked the slow way home, muttering under her breath in Comanche, words she hadn't spoken aloud in weeks. He didn't respond. But when they reached the edge of the creek, and she set him down to catch her breath, he opened his mouth. A single word, barely a whisper. She leaned close. What? He tried again, but no sound came. So she answered for him. You're not dead, she said, quiet but firm. Which means you're still meant to be something. She carried him the rest of the way to the hut. It was small, barely more than a shelter stitched from old cloth and stone. She had lived there alone for longer than most folks stayed anywhere. No one came this far west of San Saba. Not willingly. That's how she liked it. But now she laid this boy out on her bed of deer hide and started the fire. She didn't ask questions. She just worked. Cleaned his wounds. Stripped off his shirt to reveal older scars. Thin, deep, methodical. Not the kind made in a single fight, but the kind left by routine hurt. Shackles maybe. Or something worse. She cleaned him anyway. Fed him bitter broth with a horn spoon, drop by drop. For the first 2 days, he barely moved. She kept the fire burning and said nothing when he cried out in his sleep. Sometimes he called names. Sometimes he just screamed. The third night, after she'd wrapped his arms again with clean cloth, he opened his eyes and looked at her like he didn't believe she was real. Am I dead? He asked. She didn't answer at first. Just poured water into a carved bowl and handed it to him. He drank slow, coughing between gulps, then asked again, Why'd you help me? She looked at him a long time before saying, Because you looked like you didn't care if I did or not. He didn't have a reply, didn't try to explain what had happened to him. She didn't press. But over the next few days, he started to move more. Sat up, took sips of soup without her holding the bowl. On the 5th day, he tried to stand and collapsed hard against the wall. I'm not weak, he muttered, embarrassed. Then stop proving you are, she replied. He blinked at her like she'd slapped him. Is that what you think? I think your body was broken, she said calmly. But your spirit's still listening. He didn't know what to do with that. Not yet, but he didn't argue. He didn't know her name for a while. She didn't offer it. Just told him where the water was, where the traps were, and went to rest. She fixed him like someone repairing something old and valuable, not because she expected it to work again, but because she knew it deserved a chance. And slowly, he began to change. He fetched firewood, tried to boil water, asked her if birds really carried messages or if that was just something people like her said. You don't have to believe everything, she said one morning, sorting roots by color. But it helps if you listen like you might. He smiled at that. A real smile. Not smug, not grateful. Just honest. And for a moment, she thought maybe something in her had shifted too. Then came a knock. A sound sharp and certain. A man's boot against the hut door. 3 times. Not loud, not frantic, just like someone claiming something. She didn't move. The boy froze behind her. She saw the fear in his face, not fresh fear, but remembered. Old and deep. "What is it?" he whispered. "Old noise," she said. Then she stood and stepped outside. There were two of them. One sat tall on a horse, holding a double-barrel shotgun across his lap. The other was on foot, thick in the shoulders, his beard red like rust, and his boots too clean to belong out here. They stared at her like they already knew who she was, or thought they did. "You are?" the bearded man asked. Toma didn't answer. He spat into the dirt. "That boy inside. He's not yours." "I didn't say he was," she replied. "Well, he ain't anybody's anymore. That's what the wire was for." The man on horseback chuckled. "You picked up a wild dog, Comanche." She stared at both of them, her face calm. "Still, I've seen wild dogs," she said. "They bark. They bite. He just breathes." The red-bearded man stepped closer. "He stole from us. Took a horse. Took whiskey. Left without paying. Then tried to stab a man who gave him food." "Then you should have killed him clean," Thomas said. The man narrowed his eyes. "We tried. Didn't expect some old woman to pull him out of the dirt." He raised his gun a little, not aimed, but high enough to change the air. A warning. Inside the hut, the boy stood behind the door. His hands were clenched. He was shaking, but not from fear. Something else. Something tight and rising. Toma's voice didn't change. "No one owns him now. He's not yours to keep, and he wasn't yours to break." The bearded man stepped forward again. "This ain't a campfire story, lady. This is Texas. You keep a thief under your roof, you swing with him." And then a new voice came. Clear, sharp. "If you touch her, I'll gut you where you stand." Both men turned fast. The boy stood in the doorway, holding her old blade with both hands. He was still trembling, but his voice didn't crack. "You think I don't remember the nights you tied me up out back?" he said, staring at the bearded man. "You think I forgot what your boots felt like on my ribs?" The red-bearded man took a step forward. Toma raised her hand. "Try it," she said. "Please." The man hesitated. The one on horseback shifted in his saddle, uneasy. After a moment, the bearded one spat again. "Keep him. We'll say the coyotes took him." They turned and rode off slow. Not weak, but they didn't want to fight. Not today. When they were gone, the boy dropped the blade and leaned against the doorframe, breathing hard. He looked like he might fall over again. "You were going to fight them," Thomas said. "I would have died," he replied. She nodded. "Yes, but you let me do it anyway." "You didn't need me to save you," she said. "You needed to decide you were worth saving." He looked at her for a long time, and something in his face cracked. Not sadness, not pain, just something heavy that had been sitting there too long. "I think I want a name now," he said softly. Thomas studied him. Quiet. Still. Then she said, "Not yet." 3 weeks passed. His body healed. His arms grew stronger. His legs stopped shaking. He hunted rabbits. He learned how to clean a fish without gagging. One morning, he caught a crow in a snare and let it go, just to prove he could. Toma watched. She didn't praise him. Not because she wasn't proud, but because pride makes people careless. And he wasn't ready for that yet. Still, every evening he sat near a fire, asking questions, listening, sometimes about her past, sometimes about the land, sometimes just about things he didn't understand. "What do Comanche call someone who doesn't belong anywhere?" he asked once. She stirred the stew. "We don't." "Why not?" "Because even ghosts belong to someone." He didn't speak for a while after that. On the 4th week, Toma saw something that made her stomach turn cold. A trail of smoke, rising from the hills. Not a campfire. Not by accident. It was short, sharp. A signal. She knew what it meant. Not Comanche. Not Apache. This was military. U.S. cavalry. And they were searching for something. She didn't tell the boy that night. Just sharpen her knives and listen to the trees. The next morning, she gave him a task. "Go to the river bend," she said. "Check the traps." "We checked them yesterday," he said. "Check again." He looked at her, confused. "Are you all right?" She didn't answer, just handed him a bundle of sage. "Burn this if you see men in uniform." He took it without arguing, but he saw the look in her eyes. They came by midday. 7 riders. Dusty blue coats. Cold eyes. They didn't shout. Didn't storm the place. Just stopped outside and waited. Toma stood in the doorway, silent. The lead officer was tall, pale, with a mustache too thin for his face. He tipped his hat, polite but stiff. "Afternoon," he said. "We're looking for an escaped prisoner. Young, mixed blood. Could be going by Jesse. Maybe Eli. Or nothing at all." Toma didn't speak. "He's dangerous," the officer added. "Stole from us. Attacked a rancher. Shot one of ours." She crossed her arms. "He got tied to a fence before or after all that." The officer paused. "Excuse me," I said. "Maybe you should ask who the law protects before you call someone dangerous." He didn't like that. His hand moved near his gun. "You're harboring a criminal." "No," she said. "I'm protecting a boy who was left for buzzards and now feeds himself and asks good questions." The officer looked back at his men, then at her. "He's not your kind," he said. She didn't blink. "He is now." They didn't come down right away. They stayed on a ridge 2 full days, watching, waiting, hoping the boy would come back. But he didn't. He'd learned better than that. The boy didn't come back to the hut. He stayed hidden in the hills, just like she had taught him. He moved through the trees like a shadow, low, quiet, unseen. He drank from the creek, ate from what he could find, and kept watch on the ridge from behind thick brush. He saw the soldiers light fires, saw them wait, saw them talk in low voices. But he didn't panic. He didn't run. Not yet. He knew she was still at the hut, and he knew she was waiting, like always, calm and patient. He remembered the way she told him to burn the sage if he saw uniforms. He hadn't needed to. They were right there in front of him. But now it was time to act. On the 3rd night, under a thin moon, he sent a signal. Smoke. 3 short puffs. 2 long ones. A message they'd agreed on. "I'm coming." Quiet. No weapons. He waited until the wind was right, then crawled down the ridge, careful not to snap a twig or stir a bird. The soldiers didn't hear him. He reached their camp while they slept. No guard posted. No watchman awake. They were too sure of themselves. He found their coffee satchel and poured in crushed yarrow, a bitter herb that Toma had taught him about. It wouldn't kill them, but it would empty their bellies fast. By morning, they drank it without knowing. By noon, they were sick in the bushes, groaning weak. Toma stood outside the hut when he returned. He was muddy, tired but grinning. "Time to go," she said. He didn't argue. They packed what they needed: 2 knives, a roll of dried meat, a small pouch of healing root, and a coil of rope. They left behind the rest. No need to carry what no longer mattered. The land would take care of it. They rode east. Not fast, but steady. The boy didn't ask where. Toma didn't explain. She only said, "Somewhere no one will look for you again." They passed dry creeks, soft hills, forests too thick for maps. At night, they built small fires and kept them low. They didn't speak much. Didn't need to. The boy watched her, learned how she walked with the wind, how she placed her bed near trees that bent not snapped, how she trusted the land more than people. One night, as the fire cracked between them, he looked up and said, "I would have come back for you." She stirred the coals. "I know. They would have killed me." "Maybe," she said, "but it wouldn't have mattered." He didn't understand what she meant at first, but he remembered how it felt to hear her voice when no one else came. How she didn't ask him to explain, didn't demand a reason, just save him because he still breathed. That was enough. They found a place after 5 days, a hollow tucked between red cliffs where the wind made music in the morning. She hadn't been there in years, not since her family had vanished. Bones of her old life still rested under that earth. But now it would be home again for both of them. The boy chopped wood without being asked. She stitched together a lean-to from hide and sticks. They moved without words, like people who knew this wasn't about starting over, but about continuing from the only place left. Days passed in rhythm. Water, food, rest. No panic, just living. One morning, the boy came back from the creek with something in his hand. A turtle, small, its shell cracked. "Found him upside down," he said. "Thought he was done for." Toma took it gently, turned it in her hands. "He might be." Still flipped him over, he said. She looked at him. "Doing what?" "Turning things upright," he said, then paused. "Even if they're dying." She watched him place the turtle in the grass. It took a moment, but slowly, the creature pulled its head out and started crawling. He sat beside her, quiet, then said, "I think maybe I was waiting for someone to flip me back over, too." Toma didn't say anything, just stood beside him and nodded. "Then you're not the only one." That night they shared stories. Not big ones. Not the kind told to crowds. The kind that hurt a little. The kind you tell to someone who's stayed. She told him about her sister, the youngest, who used to hide sunflower seeds in her dress and plant them behind their lodge, hoping to make something grow. They never did, she said, but she always planted them anyway. He told her about a dog he once loved. A mutt, one eye, crooked paw. "He never left my side," he said, "until one day he did. Guess he knew I was too broken to follow." Toma looked at the fire. "Maybe he knew you were ready to walk alone." "I wasn't," he said. She didn't argue, just handed him a strip of meat and let the flames answer for both of them. By the next moon, he was stronger, not just in his arms, in how he stood, how he listened, how he moved through the trees without flinching at thunder. He carved shapes into wood now. Simple things. Animals. Symbols. His hands didn't shake anymore. His voice had weight, but not anger. One evening, she handed him a small bundle wrapped in old hide. He opened it. Inside was a necklace, beaded in the colors of dusk and river stones. "I made it for my brother," she said, "before the raids." He looked up. "I can't take this." "You're not taking it," she said. "You're wearing it, until you know your name." He held it carefully, tied it around his neck with fingers that moved slow and sure. "What did you call him?" "Your brother," he asked. "Sadiq," she said. "It means one who listens before speaking." He nodded. "Seems like a good thing to be." She didn't say it out loud, but she thought it. "So do you?" One morning, he came back through the trees with a deer slung across his shoulders. It was small, clean shot behind the shoulder, no wasted meat. He dropped it gently near the hut and stood there, waiting for her to say something. He was breathing hard, but not showing off. She knelt beside it, touched the fur, ran a hand along the smooth curve of the body, checked the wound. She didn't look up right away. "Well," he asked, half a grin on his face. "Was that lucky?" She looked at him. "No." He blinked. "No, that wasn't luck," she said. "That was earned." He opened his mouth, but before he could say anything, she stood and walked back into the hut. When she returned, she held something small in her hands. A piece of old hide, soft with age, the edges worn down by time. Red thread ran across in sharp, even symbols. She handed it to him without saying a word. He looked down at it, confused. "What is it?" "Your name," she said. His eyes widened. "You said you'd tell me when I earned it." "I did." He studied the markings. His thumb moved slowly over the stitches. "What does it say?" "Noah," she replied. He furrowed his brow. "What's that mean?" She looked him in the eyes, steady and clear. "It means he who chooses where he belongs." Noah didn't speak at first. He just held the hide close to his chest, whispered the name to himself like it was something fragile and important. "Noah." He didn't ask her if she was sure. Didn't ask her if it was right. He just said it again, softer this time. "Noah." They never went back to the old hut. Never returned to the creek where he almost died. Not because they were running, but because it no longer mattered. The boy tied to the fence didn't exist anymore. Noah wasn't just healed. He was becoming someone. They traveled light, moved with the seasons, trapped for fur, gathered roots, followed the patterns of the animals and trees. Sometimes they passed close to towns, but they didn't stay long. Other times, they vanished into the deep parts of the land where even the birds forgot to sing. But everywhere they went, Noah carved a mark on a tree. A small circle with a single line through it. Toma asked once, "What does it mean?" He looked at her, thoughtful. "It means someone lived here who wasn't meant to die in silence." She nodded, didn't ask again. Years passed. Noah grew taller, his shoulders wide like the trees they slept beneath. His voice deepened, slow and careful. But he never lost the quiet in his eyes, or the way he fed birds from his hand, or how he stitched leather with steady fingers. He helped strangers when they needed it, fixed broken wagon wheels, carried water for women with tired backs, even found a missing child once and brought her home with his own coat around her shoulders. Some people called him strange. Others said he was a ghost. But those who sat by his fire, who shared his stew and heard his soft stories, said something else. "He's not a ghost," they whispered. "He's just a boy. Someone once tied to a fence until someone better gave him a reason not to stay there." And they were right. Because one spring, while fishing near a quiet bend in the river, Noah met a girl. Her name was Kia, or maybe something close. Her hair was tangled, her voice sharp, but she laughed at his quiet jokes. And she came back the next day with berries and more questions than answers. 3 months later, she followed him to the cedar grove he called home. Toma watched them from a distance. Didn't say a word. But that night, for the first time in years, she sang. Soft. Old. The kind of song that had no beginning or end. One that carried something deep and unspoken. When Noah asked her what it meant, she said, "It's a song for welcoming someone who never expected to be welcomed." He didn't ask if she meant him or the girl. He already knew. Toma's steps slowed. Her hair turned white. She spoke less, but her words landed like stones in still water, small but deep. She had given the last of her strength to a life she didn't know she'd still be part of. And now she was ready. One evening, as the firelight danced on the walls of their lodge, she called Noah to her side. "I'm ready to go," she said. He swallowed hard. "Where?" She smiled, small and tired. "Wherever the buffalo go when they're no longer hunted." He blinked fast, trying not to cry. "Ten." She lifted her hand. "Don't name it. Just hold my hand. That's enough." And he did. He held it all through the night. As the fire dimmed and the wind slowed, and the stars kept quiet above them. When the sun rose, she was gone, but her fingers were still warm. Noah buried her beneath the cedar grove, where the wind was always soft and the ground felt warm even in winter. He didn't make a big marker, just stacked smooth river stones in a small circle and tied one of her old feathers to the tallest branch nearby. He sat there all day, not saying much. The girl, Kia, kept her distance, watching from the edge of the trees. She didn't try to comfort him with words. She just brought water, laid a blanket nearby, and left him space. When the stars came out, he whispered, "She didn't just save me. She built me again." Kia nodded slowly. "I know." He didn't cry in front of her, not that night. But later, when the fire was low and she pretended to sleep, she heard the quiet shaking of his breath, like someone trying not to fall apart. The next morning, he placed a carved wooden turtle beside the stones, just like the one he had found long ago, flipped over, nearly gone. She believed things could still walk again, he said. From that day, something changed in Noah. He didn't stop moving, didn't stop helping, but he also didn't smile the same way. Not right away. There was a kind of stillness in him now, like a pond after a storm. Calm, but carrying weight. He and Kia stayed near the grove that year, built stronger walls for the lodge, dug a deeper well, caught enough fish to dry and store. One morning, Kia came to him with her hands shaking and her eyes wide. "Noah," she said, "I think I'm carrying something." He looked at her, confused. "What do you mean?" She placed his hand gently on her stomach. "I mean, we're not just two anymore." He stared at her for a long time, silent. Then he did something she hadn't seen in months, he laughed. Not a loud laugh, but a real one. A laugh that shook his shoulders and made his eyes shine again. They made a new space in the lodge, widened it, smoothed the floor. Kia sang to the belly growing beneath her dress. Noah carved little animals from cedar bark, foxes, deer, bears with round eyes. He still visited Toma's stones each evening, still laid a fresh flower or pine branch. Sometimes he'd sit and just talk to her, telling her about the birds or the clouds, or how scared he was to be a father. "I don't know if I can do this," he said one night. "I never had one myself." But the wind moved through the leaves gently, like it was brushing his cheek, and he remembered what she once told him. "You don't need to know everything. You just need to stay." When the baby came, it was raining. The kind of rain that fills rivers, but doesn't flood them, just enough to make everything smell like earth and life. Kia screamed only once, then twice. Then there was silence. Then came the sound. Small, wet, alive. Noah held his daughter in his hands like something too soft to be real. She was pink and squirming and loud, but she calmed when he pressed her to his chest. Kia looked at him through tired eyes. "What should we call her?" Noah didn't hesitate. Toma, he said. Kia smiled. Good name. That night, he sat outside with his daughter wrapped tight against him. The rain had stopped, and the stars peeked through the clouds. He looked up and whispered, She'll know your stories. Every single one. He kept that promise. As the years passed, little Toma learned to walk through the woods like her father. She knew which berries to eat, which frogs to leave alone. She could light a fire by age 6 and carve a spoon by 7. She laughed often like Kia, but she listened first like Noah. One winter, when she found a wounded bird, she wrapped it in her scarf and carried it home. It's dying, Kia warned gently. But the girl shook her head. That doesn't mean it stops mattering. Noah smiled when he heard that, because he remembered being tied to a fence, and how someone, once, had looked at him and said the same thing without needing the words. He sat with his daughter that night beside the fire, carving a new turtle together. She asked, Why do you always make turtles? He paused. Because they don't run, he said. They carry everything on their backs, but they keep going. Toma held the wooden turtle in her small hands and nodded. Then I'm a turtle too. He kissed the top of her head. You're more than that, he said softly. You're proof that someone can be broken and still choose to build something better. Years passed like wind through the grass, quiet, but always moving. Toma, now nearly 10, had grown tall and sure-footed. Her hair was wild like her mother's, and her eyes deep like Noah's, watchful but kind. She could track deer by broken twigs, start a fire in rain, and once stood nose to nose with a black bear and didn't flinch. She was fearless in a way only children raised by silence and love could be. But the world outside the grove didn't sleep forever. One day, while gathering herbs near the edge of the valley, Noah saw smoke, thin, black, twisting in the sky. Not from firewood, not from someone warming a stew. This was signal smoke. Military. Controlled. He didn't panic. He returned home, quiet. Told Kia to pack only what they needed. Not again, she whispered. Noah nodded once. Again. They had always known this day might come. Noah had told her about the men who hunted him. The fence. The boy he used to be. He hoped time had buried all of it. But some ghosts don't stay dead. Before leaving, he took Toma aside and knelt in front of her. We're going to walk far, he said, through cold, through dark, and maybe through fear. But I need you to trust me. Can you do that? She looked at him and nodded. I trust you more than the sky. They moved before sunrise, taking a path only Noah knew, through the rocks behind the hills, where even the deer hesitated to go. Toma never complained, even when her feet hurt. Kia kept quiet too, though Noah saw the worry behind her eyes. They traveled for 2 days. Then came a sound, a sharp crack, far off, but not thunder. A gunshot. Noah's back stiffened. They were being tracked. That night, they didn't build a fire. They ate dry roots in the dark, and he kept watch. When Toma fell asleep, curled in Kia's arms, Noah crept into the woods. He waited, listened. Voices. 3 men. Close enough to hear, but far enough not to see. Armed. Government tone. He's in this range, one said. The Comanche woman who took him years ago could still be with him. Noah's blood went cold. They weren't just looking for him. They were still trying to erase her, too. He returned quietly, told Kia what he'd heard. Her jaw clenched, but she didn't cry. She just touched Toma's hair and whispered, We keep moving. But Noah stopped her. Not this time. Kia looked at him, confused. What do you mean? They'll never stop, he said. Unless I end it. You're not going back, she said, already shaking her head. You don't owe them anything. He nodded slowly. I know, but I owe you peace. That night, while they slept, he left. Took nothing but a knife and the turtle necklace Toma had made him from bones and string. He followed the trail backwards. Found the men at dawn, camped near the river. He stepped out from the trees, hands raised. I'm who you're looking for, he said. The 3 men jumped to their feet, rifles aimed. But he didn't move. You were a ghost, one of them muttered. Didn't think you were real. I was real enough to survive, he said. The leader stepped forward. You have a family now? Noah didn't answer. People like you don't get to disappear. Noah looked at him calmly. People like me were never supposed to exist in the first place. That's what scares you. The leader raised his gun. You think you can stop this? Noah smiled, tired and certain. I already did. He turned and walked toward the trees again. Slowly, without fear, a shot rang out. But it missed. The men didn't follow, because they weren't sure anymore if they were hunting a man or something stronger than guilt. Noah disappeared into the woods again, like smoke swallowed by wind. He returned 2 days later, tired, silent, but alive. Kia ran to him and didn't let go. Toma just said, "You came back." He smiled. Always. That spring, it didn't move again. They built something stronger. Not a hut, but a home. Stone base, thatched roof, windows that faced the sunrise. They carved animals into the walls, hung feathers in the doorways, and in the very center, above the hearth, Noah placed one word: belong. Not because the world had given them a place, but because they had chosen one for themselves. The seasons passed like old songs, familiar, gentle, always coming back around. Toma was 12 now. She climbed trees higher than the birds, asked questions sharper than any knife, and made people stop and think with just a look. She carried the same quiet fire that had once lived in Noah. But she was her own person too, bold, curious, with a heart too big for silence. One crisp autumn morning, as the leaves turned red and gold, a stranger arrived at their home. He wasn't dressed like a traveler. His coat was too clean, his boots too new. He had soft hands and eyes that kept searching the corners of the trees like he was never off duty. Noah stepped onto the porch slowly, a calm weight in his steps. "You're a long way from your road," he said. The man nodded. "Name's Ellison. I'm with Interior Affairs, investigating old files from a lost military case." "From? I know where," Noah said quietly. "And I know who sent you." Ellison didn't flinch. "You're not in trouble." That's what they always say before the trouble starts. But Ellison didn't pull a weapon, didn't raise his voice. He sat on the old log bench, wiping dust from his glasses. "I'm not here to hurt you," he said. "I'm here to write down the truth, before it gets lost." Noah studied him, not with fear, but caution. "What truth?" he asked. Ellison looked up at the house. "That someone tried to silence a boy once, tied him to a fence, covered up what happened in the field. But that boy didn't die. And the woman who found him, she saved more than just a life." Noah's jaw tightened. "You know her name?" "I know pieces," Ellison said, "but they don't match the ones I see here." He tapped his chest. Whoever she really was, she mattered. Noah sat across from him now, a space between them like a line no one had drawn. "And what do you want from me?" "Just the story," Ellison said. "Your words, not their report, not their edits." Noah didn't speak for a long time. Then he reached into his pocket, pulled out a folded piece of deer hide, the same one with red thread, still strong after all these years. "She gave me my name," he said, "so I wouldn't live as what they left behind." And then he talked. Slow, careful, not for show, just truth. About the fence, the bruises, the woman who didn't ask questions before cutting the ropes. About the lessons by the fire, the turtles, the winters, the fear, and the day he chose not to run anymore. Ellison wrote in silence. No tape recorders, just pen and paper. When it was over, the sun was setting. Toma stood by the door, arms crossed, watching with narrowed eyes. "Are you going to write about her too?" she asked. Ellison smiled. "Only if you help me tell it right." She nodded once, then vanished inside. The next day, Ellison was gone, but he left behind a notebook on the porch. The cover said, "The boy who walked out of the fence," and beneath it, in small, careful letters, told by the ones who never stopped walking. The years softened everything, edges, wounds, even memories. But something stayed clear, like the way Kia would braid Toma's hair before bed, humming songs from long ago, or the way Noah still sat under the cedar grove every morning, pouring tea for a woman who lived only in their hearts now. Toma grew into herself. At 16, she built a canoe with her own hands and paddled down the river alone, just to see how far she could go. At 18, she came back, not because she failed, but because she realized home was not something you find. It's something you build and protect. People started coming to them then. Travelers, lost kids, a tired woman with a bruised cheek, a man who didn't speak for 3 days. Noah didn't ask questions. He just showed them how to dig a well, how to gather pine sap, how to start again. One day, Toma found a boy, no older than she had been once, wandering near the river, hungry and scared. She brought him home, didn't ask where he came from, just handed him soup and said, "You can stay, if you want." He stared at her like she was impossible. Noah stood quietly behind her, arms crossed, proud. Kia smiled from the doorway. "Just like her father," she said softly. That night, as they sat around the fire, the boy asked, "Why are you helping me?" Toma looked at him. "Because someone once helped my father," she said. "And if they hadn't, I wouldn't be here." He didn't speak again, but he didn't run either. He stayed. In the grove, there were now more stones. One for Kia's mother, who had found peace there before she passed. One for a nameless child born too early. One for a woman who had cut ropes and never asked for anything in return. Each stone had no name, only a carved mark. But Noah knew each one by touch. One evening, when Thomas sat beside him under the trees, she asked, "Do you think they remember us?" Noah smiled gently. "I think they're the reason we remember ourselves." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "You never talk about the fence anymore." "No," he said, "because I'm no longer tied to it." They sat in silence, the leaves whispering stories above them. Years later, when Noah grew old and his hands began to shake, it was Toma who lit the fires, taught the new ones, carved the turtles. When he could no longer walk far, she built a bench for him beneath the biggest cedar. When he couldn't carve anymore, she placed one of his old turtles in his hands. And when his time came, he didn't fear it, because he had already lived what most never do. Not just survival, but healing. Not just being rescued, but choosing to become the one who rescues. They buried him beside the first stone, beneath the feather tree. Toma cried, but not for long. Then she picked up the turtle and kept going. Moral lesson: sometimes the people this world tries to erase are the very ones who end up saving it. Not with power, not with weapons, but with kindness, with presence, with a quiet promise to never leave someone tied and forgotten. Because in the end, it only takes one person to cut the rope. And sometimes, that's all a life needs to begin.